I've spoken already.
Oh, you have? Okay, good.
Good afternoon, Chair Tierney and Commissioners. I'm Andrea Goldman speaking on behalf of the Landmarks Conservancy. In 1987, the Conservancy enthusiastically testified in favor of the Riverside West End Historic District. Nearly 25 years later, we do so again for this extension, although in slightly condensed form, which was due to the hour. Walking along West End Avenue, one is struck by the vast collection of stunning historic architecture in all directions. The stately apartment buildings on the avenue are complemented by magnificent brownstones and row houses on side streets, and by many historic religious properties and other community facilities. With an eclectic mix of forms, materials, and details, this streetscape creates a vibrant sense of place. Landmarking will also provide many advantages to this district. The city's own independent budget office released a study stating that historic district designation stabilizes and improves property values. Just as designation has benefited other sections of the Upper West Side, this extension will enhance the neighborhood, ensuring that any alterations are guided by the landmarks law. The Conservancy is pleased to join with neighbors, public officials, and preservationists in support of this district. In particular, we are grateful to the West End Preservation Society for initiating this effort, and to the Landmarks Commission for significantly expanding the scope and acting with speed. Thank you for the opportunity to present the Conservancy's views.
Thank you very much. Melissa Elstein. And then Miriam Phoebus will be next. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I want to thank Chairman Tierney and the Commissioners for conducting this hearing and creating this proposed historic district extension. I'm representing the West 80s Neighborhood Association. We're comprised of residents, stores, and commercial members, and we are strongly supporting the Landmark Preservation Commission's extension. In support of this extension in the past, we have already submitted to you over 2,000 signatures from residents, and we've also received letters of support from Congressman Nadler, New York State Assembly members Linda Rosenthal and Daniel O'Donnell, then State Senator Eric Schneiderman, and New York City Council member Gail Brewer. We especially believe the inclusion of the late 19th century brownstones, such as the historic CPH Gilbert brownstones, as well as the elegant pre-war 20th century buildings, all deserve to be included in this historic district. And earlier today, I had submitted this packet that we received with more letters of support from co-op and condo owners and residents. Thank you.
Good. Thank you very much. Miriam Phoebus. And then Gwendolyn Wright will be next.
I'm actually representing Miriam Phoebus. My name is Bonnie Brown, and I'm the Secretary for the West Side Federation of Neighborhood and Block Associations. And I'd like to read a letter from Miriam Phoebus in support of the West End historic designation. Dear Chair Tierney, the West Side Federation of Neighborhood and Block Associations represents block, neighborhood, and tenants associations and other community-oriented groups on the Upper West Side for an area covering 59 to 110 streets, Central Park West to Riverside Drive. For 40 years, the Federation has been working to improve and maintain the quality of life on the West Side. Our organization has always been at the forefront of all issues affecting our community, and landmarking is one of the most important issues affecting our neighborhoods now. The West Side Federation of Neighborhood and Block Associations supports supports the landmark designation of the 3 proposed West End Avenue historic districts. These new historic districts will protect important architecturally distinct buildings. New York City has a few hundred years of great history reflected in the architecture of these buildings that we need to preserve for future generations. We strongly urge the Landmarks Preservation Commission to designate West End Avenue between 70th Street and 109th Street and the neighboring cross streets and historic district. Sincerely, Miriam Phoebus, President. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. Gwendolyn Wright. And then Kevin Lazarian will be next.
Thank you, Chairman Tierney, and to all of the committee and the staff, and the audience here. I'm Gwendolyn Wright, a professor at Columbia in the Graduate School of Architecture, Planning, and Preservation. I also say hello to my colleague Andrew Dalkart, although I will take a different position from him. I am an expert on the history of American housing. I've written a number of books about this, and to make a plug, I am also committed to public education and the host for the 9th year of a program called History Detectives that shows the public how we do history. I've been asked to address the issue of West End Avenue in particular within this larger proposed designation. And I present here 9 reasons that speak against the idea of designation. The first is that the 2 already designated historic districts already incorporate most of the significant buildings and building groups on West End Avenue. As an architectural historian, I judge them to be the most harmonious stretches along West End. They show the full range of the individual types that constitute architectural, that constitute apartment buildings, row houses, and domestically oriented institutions. They have all of the intact groups of row houses. I certainly agree with those of you who've spoken about the significance of row houses in terms of the history of New York. But those are important primarily as groups, and we have the groups within these designated areas. Second, I am very impressed by the 3 decades of study that the Landmarks Preservation Commission has put into this area. Diligent study that ended up making, I think, some very perspicacious choices about individual landmarks and these 2 existing groups. Strangely, the report, and I must say, my colleague Professor Dalkart's earlier survey, seemed to disparage this work, suggesting, as he puts it in one comment, that because there are individual buildings that have been designated, we should therefore designate the whole thing. This, in fact, takes us to a difficult point of looking at the issue of language. I think that we need to say that the language that is used among those of us who are committed to preservation tends to be rather ambiguous. Words like character are hard to define. A sense of place is something that can be said by anyone about where they live. Everyone has a sense of place about their block and their street. And there's a risk of generalizing from this that is significant because of the decision that was recently taken in Chicago, that because of the vague language, the Landmarks Preservation Law there was declared unconstitutional. So I think it becomes incumbent upon all of us to take on the challenge of being very precise about our language and realizing that emotions that we have about our neighborhood and our street are not necessarily accepted by everyone. Now, we can take along with that an issue about literature. That is as my colleague Ms. Carson has mentioned, there is a disparaging, I think, a fairly disparaging remark about West End Avenue in Goldberger's book. But no other guidebook to New York City mentions West End Avenue as a distinctive or quintessential New York Avenue. I don't think we can fairly compare it to the Champs-Élysées. I think that most people looking at remarkable residential avenues in New York would think about Fifth Avenue, Park Avenue, along the west side, Riverside, and Central Park West. Apart from residents, West End Avenue does not leap to people's understanding of what it is to find something that is quintessentially in and of New York. Now, this takes me to the issue of scale, which I think is extremely important for the Commission to consider. There is an anomaly in terms of existing historic districts. West End alone is 37 blocks. Over half of the historic districts in New York are 1 to 10 blocks, and only 5 have even approached the 37 blocks in one piece of the first extension in terms of size. And those are Soho, Tribeca, the Upper West Side Central Park West District, Greenwich Village, and the various districts of the Upper East Side. I find it difficult to say that there should be a conglomeration of historic districts on the Upper West Side that is so much larger than anything else in New York. It's also, of course, important to realize that scale will have an issue in terms of the impact on the Upper West Side. To take on all of these areas would be basically stopping the possibility of a future development along there.
Okay,
Now,
we have a 30-minute warning.
one second,
and
Board, one second.
way
Board,
over the 3 minutes, so if you could
I
sum
want
up,
to bring up,
please.
in summarizing, I want to bring up the issue about change. That I think it is important that we look at this area in terms of its history of providing housing and the need to continue to provide housing for a large, ever-growing, and more diverse community of New Yorkers. And designating the entire district will not allow that to happen.
Okay, thank you very much. Kevin Lalazarian. Thank you. And Milani Caladia will be next.
Good afternoon, Commission. My name is Kevin Lalazari. I am the owner of 272 through 276 West 86th Street. 272 through 276 West 86th Street are the three easternmost buildings of a series of 5 row houses on the south side of 86th Street between Broadway and West End Avenue. I acquired them in the spring of 2010 with the intent of demolishing them and turning them and constructing an as-of-right building under the contextual zoning for the site. At that time, I knew about the proposal to establish a West End Avenue Historic District, but the expansion of the district to encompass a significant portion of the area west of Broadway, including 86th Street, was not part of the public dialogue. The buildings were and are in a dilapidated condition. The facades are in very poor condition and need substantial work. As you know, West 86th Street is a wide street. The Broadway West End Avenue block consists primarily of 12 to 14-story street wall buildings. These 3 buildings are actually the exception to the dominant character of the existing context and represent a sharp break from the street wall context of this block. I know that these buildings were designed by C.P.H. Gilbert, no relation to the renowned architect Casco. C.P.H. Gilbert was a well-known architect of townhouses and mansions. I am not an architectural historian, but I would like to point out that the AIA guide lists 37 buildings in New York City designed by C.P.H. Gilbert and does not even mention these buildings. Since that one does include the Church of St. Paul and St. Andrew across the street from 530 West End Avenue on the corner of West End, this omission is not an oversight. Clearly, they are not of his most distinguished works. In drawing up the proposed district, the staff of the Commission has seen fit to omit other buildings. In fact, it omitted the Boulevard on the north side of 86th Street. I would ask that you consider omitting these buildings from the district as well. I am willing to construct a building that is consistent with the built context and is sensitive to the existing aesthetic. For example, I will not build a glass curtain wall building, but will look to do a masonry structure. Furthermore, I am prepared to commit to work with the Commission, the elected officials, and the community to design a building that meets these objectives.
Thank you very much. Melanie Capadia, not here at the moment. Jeffrey Carlson. And then Susan Davis, Ely.
Hi, my name is Jeffrey Carlson. I work with Beachland Management for 265 and 251 West 81st Street. I'm not really opposed to the entire scope of the landmark preservation. We were just asking that our 2 buildings be, not included. Basically, it's the area that jettisons out. It is surrounded by buildings that are not tall. Some of the things we heard today were consistent height, continuous stone buildings, consistent form, and without buildings around it,
This is a building that has a McDonald's, a vitamin shop. I have pictures of it here, which I'll submit. Relatively nondescript buildings that we think should be, that are not in spirit. Briefly, if it's a landmark building for us, it does affect us tremendously, because if we need a department building permit to renovate a bathroom, for example, we can't renovate a $5,000 apartment. If it takes 2 months for us to get, for example, a certificate of no effect, that's a $10,000 loss for us. If a commercial space goes vacant, we could lose $100,000 waiting for permits and regulations. So,
Okay, I appreciate that. The certificate of no effect normally, is within 48 hours and shouldn't cost $10,000. Whoever's charging you that is way, way overdoing it. But anyway, I understand your.
It's sometimes there are delays.
Okay.
And I would submit our pictures.
Sure, please do. Thank you. Susan Davis Healy? Susan? No? Okay. John Weiser? Weiser. Please, come on up. Okay. I hope it was a good memory I'm bringing back.
This is my sister Barbara. We own 2307 Broadway. We live in touch with the commission. We're okay with the landmark, as is our neighbor Jeffrey Smith of Fashion Building, which he objects to that name.
Yeah.
But we really, really have a problem with these exceptions, these huge exceptions, which we cannot believe have anything to do with the merit of the architecture, because as other people have stated, the Barnes & Noble building and the Zabar building, I think all of them actually,
all owned by the same owner,
should be deemed absolutely as worthy as Euclid Hall. I mean, that's ridiculous. To say that the Barnes & Noble, and when a big building goes up there, like a Bromley, that negates everything you're talking about doing here. Landmark in that whole district, an ugly building goes up, and it will, between 82nd and 83rd on West Side Broadway. This is a farce. And to not consider it because of its supposed non-architectural merit is just ridiculous.
we support the West End Avenue historical thing, but Broadway is a separate entity. It's not about aesthetic continuity. And we do not understand the decision to omit the Zabar's buildings, big boxes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you both for testifying. Susan Sullivan. And then Michael Zinder.
I'll be brief. My name is Susan Sullivan. I'm the president of Friends of West Park and the 151161 Owners Corporation and a member of the West 80s Neighborhood Association. These organizations represent a wide cross-section of our Upper West Side community. I'm here today at the behest of my friends, neighbors, and colleagues to urge you to support and designate the West End Historic District extension. West End Avenue, as it stands today, is at risk for the encroachment of high-rise developers who have little concern for the historic role of West End Avenue, specifically at what it played during the late 19th and 20th century, transforming attractive farmland into a burgeoning middle-class neighborhood. West End Avenue stands as a witness to the dynamic growth of the Upper West Side and should be preserved and protected from high-rise development. The architectural beauty is indisputable, and I urge you, commissioners, to vote in favor of the West End Avenue Historic District extension. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Susan. Michael Zinder. Is he here? Michael Zinder, Marlene Mansfield. Okay. Carl Valentine. Okay.
Good afternoon, and thank you for this opportunity to speak to you this afternoon. My name is Carl Valentine. I'm speaking for the board at 110 Riverside Drive. The building was built in 1929 and has been a cooperative for the last 40 years. Our building is perfectly pleasant, but not particularly historical or extraordinary in any way. We take pride in maintaining the building in the best possible condition, while being always mindful of cost to our shareholders. I chair the Cooperative Screening Committee, which is making great strides in opening our neighbors' eyes to the importance of reducing waste recycling and reducing our carbon footprint, and keeping up with technological advances. We are very much interested in harnessing solar power, heat our hot water, and hope that someday also be able to take advantage of the considerable wind power that buffets our building each day. In our cooperative, we are to be, if the cooperative were to be included in the West End Historic District, our cost of implementing projects of this nature would be substantial. Therefore, I want to speak today in opposition to the expansion of the district. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Carla or Ben Friedman? Carla, Ben Friedman? Kelly Weldon will be next. Or Wyndon, I'm not sure. Thank you.
Honorable Chairman and members of the Commission, my name is Ben Friedman, and I have lived at 261 West 85th Street with my family since 1983. I'm here to speak in favor of the proposed Riverside West End Historic District Extension 1. However, I will now focus the rest of my statement entirely on the inclusion of the square block bounded by West End Avenue, 86th Street, Broadway, and 85th Street. Standing here today before the Commission in support of landmarking this particular block gives me a strong sense of deja vu. That is because 27 years ago, in 1984, I addressed the Commission in favor of an almost identical historic district proposal for the same block. At that time, there also was a developer who intended to demolish a group of adjoining historic row houses. Then, on the north side of 85th Street, in order to construct a high-rise apartment building. Today, we once again have a developer intending to demolish 4 exemplary houses. Now, on the south side of 86th Street, that's 272 to 278 West 86th Street. On a site that backs up to the location of those historic houses, formerly on 85th Street. In both cases, the houses were built in 1895 and designed by C.P.H. Gilbert. Back in 1984, the Commission had not come as far as it is today with the art of creating historic districts. Our 1984 district proposal did not prevail, and the Gilbert houses on 85th Street were replaced by a rather crude 22-story high-rise apartment building that broke the skyline like an ungainly intruder. This excessively tall structure fractured the historic character of our street and obliterated the harmonious scale relationship that had then existed. I urge the Commissioners to visit this particular block if you haven't already done so, and see for yourselves how the previous relationship between buildings was thoroughly shattered. The Landmarks Protection Commission now has a second chance to take positive action by including within this historic district the 4 historic buildings on the south side of 86th Street. Here, the building height, roof lines, exterior materials, and facade details form a harmonious composition that could well serve as a model for urban design in other similar situations. The architects, planners, and developers of that earlier period seem to have had a good sense of proportion, height, scale, and materials when putting a block of buildings together in terms of historic preservation. In terms of historic preservation, it makes no sense here to allow these fine buildings to be replaced by a second intrusive high-rise building. In other words, let's not make the same mistake twice. Let this Commission be known for its good works by voting to include the entire block when the proposed historic district within the historic district so that these buildings may be conserved for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Kelly Weldon, here or not here? Shirley Quinlan, not quite sure of that. Shirley, no? Erwin Solomon. Christine Sutherland Pankow. K-N-K-O-W. Rick Spinell, Spinell, there you go. Then Cynthia Doty will be next.
Thank you, Commissioner, for allowing me to speak. My name is Rick Spinell. I'm a resident of 278 West 86th Street. I'm owner of one of the co-ops in that small building. Just want to touch on a couple things. If you walk from Park to Park, Central Park, west to Riverside Drive along 86th Street, that's from Central Park to Riverside Drive Park, there are less than 15 low-rise residential, what we call row houses. I think 2 of them are privately owned by institutions, the rest are residential. I live in the Gilbert houses that have been mentioned several times between Broadway and West End, which are 4 identical row houses that are residential. And the 5th row house next door. So we represent about a third of the last remaining row houses on West 86th Street. I think the Commission got a copy of this a little survey, the historic significance by Mary Harris.
Yes.
If you just look at the photos, I just want to question the integrity of Mr. Lazarian about the dilapidated nature of the facades of the building. 2 of the buildings he owns have been repointed in the last decade, having been on that street for that long. And the 5th building that isn't a Gilbert building on our block that adjoins our building had also been repointed and refaced recently. So there's been a lot of work done. The photos show they're in great condition. I don't know if you viewed the property, but it is not in a dilapidated state except for the abandoned buildings that you own now that have not been maintained as far as garbage, lights out. But there's no structural problems with the front of the buildings, otherwise I'm sure the DOB would have had issued relevant violations. The other thing I'd like to say is several people that are opposing the Commission's proposal are saying that building owners will be, on their own take care of the buildings that they own and occupy, and I don't think that's true. This set of buildings is set to be carved out as by request of Mr. Lazarian to be exempt from this proposal. And our building had been approached with a 4th of those 3 buildings that are owned by a previous developer to buy us out so that they could have 80 foot of frontage to build instead of the 60 feet of frontage now that this group owns. And he said they would build to the appropriate heights that they're allowed. They're allowed 210 feet as far as the zoning goes on that block. So right now they would have a 60-foot wide building by 210 feet high. I just want, for the record, my wife and I turned down an offer for our apartment, which was 2.5 times the market value. We own the controlling shares of the building, owned over 20%, which means we blocked the deal for the other tenants in our building. There were 6 other owners who were ready to jump at offers for twice the value of their apartments. So we blocked, we blocked. So my feeling is that given the opportunity now in this market, people are willing to vacate their apartments to developers that have found that these last row houses are huge economic sort of bonuses to develop. The last development in our neighborhood on the corner of West End and 86 that knocked down 5 row houses is selling for over $2,000 a square foot. Right now, the average before that in our neighborhood was about $800 to $1,000 a square foot for co-ops. So take the value of the apartment. We turned down 2.5 times that to say we want to maintain the integrity of our neighborhood. We don't need a 210-foot tall building in the neighborhood. And I think it just shows that it's really about economics. It's really not, and it's not good stewardship. A couple times developed, the people that are opposing the plan have cited in '89 this area was not designated architecturally significant. I think if you look back in 1960, people said the same thing about Penn Station when it was raised. And I think if you look 20 years later, people would be saying, how could we ever have done that? So in 20 years, there could be a real paradigm shift of sensibility and preservation. We're going to spend billions of dollars now trying to rebuild Penn Station over the post office site. So that's just, when the developers say, well, 20 years ago this wasn't significant, I think Penn Station is a great example of hindsight.
Okay, thank you very much. Cynthia Doty.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Cynthia Doty. I'm a member of the board of the West 102nd, 103rd Street Block Association, also a Democratic district leader for the 69th Assembly District, Part A, which covers 96 to 109th Street. I'm also a member of West Siders for Responsible Development, a friend of West End Preservation Society, and Landmark West. All that's to say that I'm here in support of this designation. I wish that the area I actually represent were calendared a little bit earlier, because I think we are vulnerable. But I will come back in October. I just wanted to make a few points. It's a long day. There's been a lot of good testimony today, especially by historians, but importantly by neighbors and community members who I think should have a priority in your consideration. A couple points. First, I think the process has been transparent and open. I know that the West End Preservation Society has had many public meetings and has really put out a lot of information to the community, to all the developers and to homeowners and so forth about what was going forward. So I don't think that's much of a valid argument. Secondly, I think this designation is not anti-development. Instead, it is pro-preservation and pro-neighborhood preservation. As many have testified, this is a very distinctive, cohesive area, and it merits preservation. It's actually become kind of unique in this city because so many other neighborhoods have been decimated by the most recent construction boom. So I think that it's very timely now to consider this and to preserve this neighborhood. Finally, I would say that those who are opposed are, many of them are speculators. And I think our area is very vulnerable to speculation. In my section of the area, we've lost a couple brownstones. We have extensions being added willy-nilly all over the place to some of the brownstones. The designation would not restrict changes or it would not prevent changes or prevent development. What it would do would be asking those who come forward and want to make changes to have a public review and a review by the Landmarks Commission. And those are very important elements. And I'm sorry if somebody has bought 3 or 4 brownstones with the idea of raising them and putting up, a 30-story building. But our neighborhood, in order to preserve the value and the character of our area and the architecture that already exists, it's very important that we have some guidelines. And having this as a designated historic district will provide those guidelines. And anybody who wants to come in will have to do it with the consideration and the support of the Landmarks Preservation Commission. So thank you very much, and I hope that you will vote in favor of this.
Thank you very much. Is anyone else signed up or does anybody want to speak that hasn't? Please come up now. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did submit my yellow form, but I lost it in the shuffle.
Tell me.
Howard Bureau. That's okay. I think I couldn't. Yeah, that's good.
Gotcha.
Yeah, I'm Howard Bureau. I'm on the board of the HCC. I'm the chair of the Friends of the Hall of Fame for Great Americans, the Stanford Life Masterpiece at Bronx Community College. And after a lifetime being a domiciliary of the Bronx on the mainland, I moved to the Isle of Manhattan recently and wind up at 411 West End Avenue, one of the last great apartment houses on West End of the Depression era, modern deco. In any case, I just want to rise on this. I believe we're on the day of the bicentennial of the promulgation of the grid for the Isle of Manhattan. The Times, I commend the Times article yesterday, terrific article on the original grid plan of 1811. But on this day, so we're talking about this wonderful, of course, I speak in support of the proposal for the historic district. But I just wanted to take a very few seconds. I've been taking notes in sort of rebuttal form as the afternoon's gone on, because sometimes I think that the sides speak over each other and not to each other. So I just wanted to note a few of the valid points made by the other side, if you will. For example, Mr. Slattery and Mr. Hecht talk about arbitrary and capricious abuse of discretion by the Commission. Now, I don't feel that in this case that's the case. Nonetheless, they raise an important issue because the Commission's discretion is not unbridled, obviously. And they also raise the issue of transparency. And I'm a newbie in the preservation world, but of course we all would agree that there's room for more transparency, more outreach, and so forth and so on. So the second point I want to make is the Penn Central case, of course, which is the great case of 1978, which upheld the modern regime of landmarking and districting. And there has been a recent case in Chicago where the language has been held void for vagueness and overbreadth. It's an important issue, and one that we need to keep in mind in New York, and of course all the commissions need to keep in mind throughout the country. Again, I don't think we're in that kind of a case on these facts, but nonetheless, those who would oppose this designation do raise an important issue which merits constant attention. The third issue, constitutional, if you will, I am a constitutional lawyer, so obviously I'm thinking about these things today, is the interesting and not irrelevant point raised by the pastor of the First Baptist Church, that there can be issues of regulation of freedom of religion in this kind of case of landmarking, which dovetails or imposes, depending on the point of view, on a religious institution. Again, I don't think on the facts of this particular extension, the Commission would be found to be in violation of the First Amendment rights of the Church. Nonetheless, it's an important issue that we must consider in these kinds of deliberations. And finally, I did want to note Mr. Hecht's interesting point as he saluted the ownership, private ownership of the West End Avenue buildings in all of the decades, which has led to, of course, this marvelous piece of real estate 2 miles long that we're hopefully going to designate. But he's right that without the care, the concern, the input, and the investment of the private owners all along, we wouldn't have this gem to protect in the first place. But of course, the other side of that coin is that there are threats, and the drumbeat of threats seems to be greater in recent years than it has been in the past. For example, and I know that there are issues of taste police in these things, but there's a serious break in the continuity of this wonderful West End Avenue on the next block up from ours, 81st and West End, where you have the Calvin School and the building across the street. An obvious break of the beautiful historic continuity of the avenue. So there are issues of current and future threats, even though Mr. Hecht makes an excellent point that, again, without the care and concern of the private owners, we wouldn't even arrive at a place where we want to landmark. So, having said that, I thank you for your time.
Okay.
And congratulate the Commission on its
Thank you very much. Richard Kind. Richard Kind.
He had to leave, I think.
Okay, left a statement which we will include in the record. Anyone else wish to be heard? I'm sorry?
I'm Cynthia Doty. I also live in 278 6th Street. You just heard my husband, Rick Spinell, speak a couple of moments ago. I'm speaking sort of in rebuttal form too. I've been sort of listening to some of the objections to the designation. And I just had a couple thoughts about some of the things in the neighborhood. There have been several comments about people have preserved this neighborhood and their buildings for 30 years without the need for designation. And I wonder if it might have something to do with the changing value of the neighborhood and the opportunity to let their buildings go, because as my husband mentioned, as soon as developers offered the other tenants in our co-op building a price to sell their building, everyone in our building was immediately ready to sell out to developers except us. So I wonder if people really would be able to preserve the neighborhood in the same way now that there's so much opportunity with developers wanting to rush in and turn over these buildings. The other point is there's a huge building that was just finished last year on 86th in the West End, townhouses taken down, etc. And the developers promised that it would be in keeping with the neighborhood feeling. And in fact, the building is built of limestone, but beyond that, there's nothing neighborhood about it. It's a limestone, bare, blank, kind of lifeless building. There are no people. It's the only building in the neighborhood that we don't know the doorman. It's just, it doesn't fit. So in terms of, they can build buildings that look like the neighborhood, sort of, but it still doesn't feel like it's the neighborhood, and I think there's a big bare blunt spot on that corner now. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, and I'd like to thank everybody that was here today to help us in this endeavor to move along on this district. And I also want to thank people on the staff today who have done obviously superbly. You've seen it in action. Thank you. It's very kind and greatly appreciated, I trust. But I wanted to single out, because I've named some other people today, Lorraine, unsung hero here, Lorraine Roachfield, who has been making it happen all day here in front of everyone, but also in the run-up to this over the last several months. Lorraine has provides enormous service and is extremely effective and helpful in making it possible that everybody knows that there is a hearing, that people who are property owners are made aware, they're notified. She does a superb job, and she has done it again today, and I just wanted to thank her and thank everyone else. Thank you, Lorraine. And with that, we'll take a motion to close the hearing. Motion second, and without objection, this hearing is closed. Today is closed. Thanks, everyone.